In this lesson, we're going to continue breaking apart the different pieces of our bridge. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of our bridge. And there's one thing that I want to check before we actually start breaking this apart. And let's select this little bridge access and let's hide it. So right click and hide selection. And what I want to check for is to make sure that these two pieces are not actually interpenetrating one another. And there is a little bit of separation, and we should be okay. Now, if you have objects that are interpenetrating one another, okay, what I mean by that is if they're crossing into each other, that's going to cause some problems with your dynamics. And what you'll see is a very large explosion whenever rigid bodies collide with one another. And that's basically because they're trying to separate from one another, and they kind of have this slingshot effect. And so we want to make sure that that's not happening. Now, right now, you're probably going, all right, I see these rails along the bridge, and those are interpenetrating. So isn't that going to cause a problem? Yes, it will cause a problem when we actually apply dynamic rigid bodies, or any rigid body, to this rail. Okay? So we will have to actually fix this mesh before we apply any rigid bodies to this. Okay? But before we do that, let's go ahead and do our main bridge here. So let's right click and we'll do unhide all, and that'll bring that back there. So let's select our bridge main. And what we're going to do is we are going to fracture this here. So let's go to Max Script, Run Script, and Fracture Voronoi version 1.1. Okay. And let's pick this bridge object. And just like we did before, we're going to do 150 pieces. Keep our iterations at 1, new material ID, new map channel, and then we're going to go ahead and break this into 150. But before we do that, let's change our uniform color. Let's do a blue color, and let's make sure we have a true blue. So I'm going to do 0 on red and green, and let's hit OK. Okay. And let's go ahead and change it to volume cell center, and then break into 150. Let's go ahead and wait for this to finish out. And again, like I said, it may look like Max is going to freeze up. It might say not responding. Just wait on it until it breaks apart. Okay. Now once this is finished, like I said, I always like to give it just a little bit of time to kind of catch up on its memory. You'll notice that the arrow is kind of flashing a little bit, and then it goes to solid, and that just kind of lets me know that I can go back and to start working in 3ds Max. Okay. Now that we have that broken up into different chunks, what we can do is go ahead and start fracturing some of these other pieces. And like I said, do this sparingly. So let's choose this piece right here. Let's go to 10, and let's give it a different color. Let's take this down. Let's do 100 and 100 on that, and then keep blue at 255 and hit OK. Let's break that into 10. Let's choose these smaller pieces. Let's do that same thing. Make sure we pick those. Give it that color. Just typing in 100 by 100. Break into 10. And then let's do this one chunk right here. So let's make sure we check or pick that. Change that color. Okay. Hit OK. And then break into 10. Now you could do some on the back as well if you like. But I think I'm okay with what I have so far. Alright, so we fractured this, and let's go ahead and make sure that we have this tested. So just like we did before, let's go ahead and close our Fracture Voronoi. Let's go to Edit, Select By, and Color. Let's choose that blue color, do Edit, Select By Color, hold down Control, and then select those smaller pieces. Let's set those to Dynamic, so click and hold on your rigid body type and choose Dynamic Rigid Body. Let's bring up our Mass Effects tools. Let's go to Edit, Start, and Sleep Mode. Give it a preset of Concrete, and then change our physical mesh from Convex to Original. Close out your Mass Effects tools, and then let's take our sphere and let's just move it over here in the X. And we shouldn't have to reanimate this or anything like that. We've already lined it up with this bridge. So let's hit Start Simulation. And you'll see that that breaks this apart as well as our other bridge. Okay. Okay, here we go. Now it looks like there's an original object there, and I don't remember actually cloning that. I know I said that, but I don't remember actually cloning it. So let's go ahead and pause this, reset our simulation, and I can definitely see it in there. And I think this is actually something that Fracture does sometimes, and sometimes it'll leave that original object. So what I want to do is actually delete that out. Okay. Alright. Now let's go ahead and restart this simulation. There we go. Got this bridge collapsing. Here's our other bridge collapsing down. And it looks like some of these pieces that we have here were actually left behind. Some that we fractured. So it looks like we accidentally cloned these by accident. Let's go ahead and stop that simulation. Let's select these 2 or 3 pieces, and these are the ones that we actually fractured in the beginning. So let's just delete those out. Let's hit Reset Simulation and start that. And like I said, these are problems that you might come across with using the Fracture Voronoi script. And if that happens, okay, like I said, you can always test it and then take care of those issues. And that's why I like to test as I go. Alright, so both of our bridge pieces are collapsing just fine. Let's go ahead and reset our simulation. And let's go ahead and start taking care of the rails of this bridge. So the problem that we're going to have is that this rail is interpenetrating. And whenever we break it and we apply dynamics to it, it's going to actually create a slingshot effect. So what I'm going to do is leave this rail just as it is. I'm going to fracture it and set it to a dynamic rigid body. And we're going to take a look at the kind of effect that you'll see with interpenetrating objects. So let's bring up our run script, okay, of that fracture script. Let's pick this rail. I'm going to break it apart into 50 pieces. Give it a uniform color of green, and let's do a true green. Do uniform and volume cells center, and break that into 50 pieces. Okay. Let's hit close on that one. Let's do edit, select by color, choose that color. Let's set it to dynamic. Open up our Mass Effects tools and go to the edit panel. Let's do start in sleep mode. Select our preset, go to concrete, and change our convex hull type to original. Alright. So now let's go ahead and start our simulation. Okay. Now you'll see that how that has exploded and how much different that is from what we had before. And that is because of the interpenetrating original position there. So what we need to do is take care of that. Now I did kind of like the effect that that block kind of flew at the camera there, and the explosion is really neat. But if that's not something that you're looking for, the interpenetrating objects are the culprit of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and select by, or edit select by color. I'm going to choose that object, and I'm just going to hit delete. Okay. Let's go ahead and choose the one next to it because these are all exact copies of one another. And what I want to do is actually modify this rail. So I'm going to go to polygon mode. Let's hit F3 on our keyboard, and we have that bottom polygon already selected. If you don't, just click on it and select that. And let's pull this up in the Z. Let's hit F3. And I don't want this to be, I don't want too much of a gap, but I want to pull it down to where it looks like it's resting right on top of our geometry. Okay. There we go. And you should see a little bit of red. Okay. Let's turn off polygon mode. Let's hold down Shift and let's move this over. And I'm going to just make this a copy. I'm going to hit OK. Let's hit F on our keyboard. And I'm going to hit F3 because I want to check to make sure that it's not penetrating. Let's hit G to turn off that grid there. And let me pull this over. And I can see the line right there. And we should be okay. Here we go. All right. We'll worry about the main positioning here in a little while, but I want to go ahead and break these apart. So let's go to Max Script, Run Script, Fracture, pick our rail object. Let's break that into 50 pieces. Let's go to Uniform, choose that green color. Let's do a true green, so 0 on our red and blue channels. Set that to Volume Cell Center and then break into 50. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for this one. And change that color to green. Let's hit OK. And then break into 50. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and do Edit, Select by Color. Choose both of those. Set those to Dynamic, Mass Effects, Edit, and let's do Start and Sleep mode. Set that preset to Concrete, and our mesh type to Original. Close that down. Let's do a test of this. Let's hit Start Simulation. And we'll see that our bridge collapses and then our rails begin to collapse. Okay, and this is crumbling exactly the way I'm looking for it to crumble. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and stop this simulation, reset that simulation. And in this lesson, we've taken a look at a couple of do's and don'ts on fracturing and setting up our dynamic scene. So in our next lesson, we're going to go ahead and continue to break apart these different pieces, and then we're going to move into making some of our different pieces static, and then we'll test those as we go. Okay, so I'll see you in the next lesson.